All
Awesome.
right. Perfect, Bruno. And then we have one question for you today. It's going to be a little bit of a big one, but very important question, which absolutely everyone should be interested in. So I'm going to give it to you in broad strokes. There's been a lot of people who have been coming in and they've been asking about what happens to a property portfolio that they have in the event that they are getting divorced from a spouse. So you're going to have to play a little bit with investment and also divorce law in this particular one.
So what happens to my property portfolio if I'm getting divorced? So the first question that we need to ask when it comes to this is, how are you married? Are you married in community of property, or are you married outside of community of property? This is an imperative because one doesn't know what's going to happen to your property portfolio, any of your assets, until we have an understanding on what marital property regime was actually followed. And in order to determine this, you would typically find that you've signed an ANC prior to getting married, and that would, inside the ANC, would actually contain the terms of the marriage. So whether it's out of community of property with accrual or without accrual, if there was no ANC signed, which is the anti-nuptial contract, then you're automatically married inside of community of property. So quick explanation on these. In community of property basically means that all the assets are basically clumped together. So it's a joint estate. So your property portfolio in a joint estate, if the property is in your personal name, that basically means that this estate has to be divided down the middle. It doesn't necessarily mean that the property has to be sold, because if there is enough cash to satisfy the other party's half, then cash can be paid to the other party and a property can be retained by one spouse. But if there is not enough cash in the estate, usually you'd find that you'd sell the property in order to be able to get each spouse to have half of the respective estate. Outside of community of property, with accrual and without accrual, those are two very different considerations. So without accrual, long story short, everyone just walks away and there is no division of the estate. With accrual, there is going to be a division of the estate, but it's a cash division. So again, it's not about one spouse taking the property away from the other. It's about there being a certain monetary value to the estate from the date of marriage up until the date of divorce. And this monetary value you normally find gets divided down the middle. And both spouses have a claim for that half. So if one spouse's estate did not grow by the same amount as the other spouse's estate, that difference is supposed to be divided, and the spouse whose estate is smaller has a claim for that difference. And this claim can be satisfied through a financial contribution towards the accrual. So again, doesn't necessarily mean that your property portfolio is going to have to be sold in the case of a divorce, but one of the issues is if there is not enough money in the estate, you may very well find that unfortunately one has to sell the property in order to cover the bank and pay the spouse.
Perfect. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of PLA today. So thank you very much, Bruno, and we will see you next week.
Cool. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks. Cheers.